but I might have completely misunderstood. But from seeing the sessions today, it looks like you've actually had more success in prosecution and the levels of punishment given out for the maritime cases than the terrestrial cases. Some of Jonathan's examples this morning, he was saying, it's just really, really hard to get anything. And Heb's examples seem to have, 4-year sentences, 2-year custodial sentences. Have I completely misunderstood that, or is that correct?
I will hand you over to Mark because, and particularly this goes back to illegal metal detecting and to the church thefts, but there have been some really successful prosecutions of organised crime gangs and others. But Mark, perhaps you'd like to answer that question.
Yep. So we operate across what is a spectrum of intervention. So that can be right from informal verbal advice through to conditional cautions with the police, right through to prosecution. We've currently got 6 men in jail who are serving between them 62 years imprisonment for stealing lead from churches. When Andrew, he's gone. When Andrew and I started in 2005, lead theft was seen as victimless, as a nuisance. They're only stealing it to get cider from the off licence. I think that really shows that we've turned that one round. But I would say maybe 30% of the things we do, people will respond very well to education and won't reoffend. And then maybe another 20% need a little bit more of a nudge. And what it comes down to is there's a hardcore of 20% that will only respond to sanction. So overall, across the 12 years, we've had hundreds of interventions with a number of high-profile prosecutions that have led to terms of imprisonment. And in that case of the condensers, that £101,000 proceeds of crime confiscation order was in addition to the imprisonment, and that has to come from personal assets. So the boat skipper had to sell his boat. So it really does, two hits them hard in the pocket, and crime doesn't pay, 2 puns for the price of 1.
Thank you, Mark. Another question?
One over there.
Over there? Yeah.
Thank you. It's Hannah Rigdon from Natural England, and I was wondering if I could take you back to your Sycamore Gap case study from earlier. We've been working on that since it happened with other people, and I wondered, if you knew that DEFRA and the Tree Council had been commissioned a research project to look into future better protection for ancient, veteran and special trees that are heritage in their own right, and B, if any of the panel had any sort of hints for us taking that forward as we think about future policy, and as we take that forward.
Please go first. Thank you. 2 excellent questions. In terms of the protection of heritage and veteran trees, personal view, not HE view, my personal view as an archaeologist is that they should be scheduled in the same way as built archaeology. And you can quote me on that. I think they are, think of the generations of people that they've seen in their lifetimes. And I was showing some of my Cub Scouts the other day some graffiti that had been put on oak trees in Kent just before D-Day, where soldiers had carved messages into the trees, and those messages had grown over the last 80 years. That's got to be scheduled, hasn't it? As well as the living organism. In terms of the Sycamore Gap, not a particularly old tree, not particularly old, but iconic and beloved. And obviously it's a live investigation. And I've got to say that in terms of the MOU that we produced back in 2011, that was a textbook partnership investigation. When you look at the moving parts in it, UNESCO, Northumberland National Park, Historic England, English Heritage, National Trust, Natural England, this is what get in trouble. Forestry, was it Commission or England on this case? Was it Alison? Was it England? Commission. Doing their wonderful volumetrics equation to work out the financial value of the tree that went alongside the heritage value of the tree. And of course with Northumbria Police as well. Hopefully we'll see a charging result in the next couple of weeks. What it did show though is that for hitting the wall under Section 28 of the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Areas Act, the maximum penalty for damaging the wall is 2 years in jail. Chopping the tree down, which is not currently protected, using the Criminal Damage Act 1971, maximum penalty is 10 years in jail. So maybe there's some discussions to be had here with DCMS around aligning those penalties. So what was the next question?
It was about any sort of tips and things. So that
Right. So yeah, I've got it. Yeah. So I've got it. Is right from the start, Andy and Andrew, absolutely explicit. There's really no space between the natural and the historic environment. They run side by side. Whether it's an urban setting, a coastal setting, a rural setting, really the two things go together. So closer working relationships with DEFRA, Natural England around this piece of work has got to be one of the next steps.
Yeah. Andy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just briefly, I agree with Mark. I mean, often, as many of us will know, some of these very historic trees, ancient trees, they sit in a landscape, sometimes alongside buildings which are kind of respecting those trees and vice versa. So I think this is probably a matter for government and licensing and a kind of similar regime. But on the specific about tips, there's definitely a very strong read across. Technology can help, but sometimes in very remote areas, as with buildings and other archaeology, in remote areas, technology can be a bit tricky to work. But everything I've found in terms of communities, people really care about these trees in the same way they do about archaeology. And when you start to look even at remote areas which you think are sparse and people don't go there, if you hang around, which I sometimes do to find these things out, you find dog walkers, horse riders, ramblers, etc., ecologists. And I think there are opportunities to kind of read across around Heritage Watch and get local people involved. It's that people plus technology can be very effective.
You just reminded me, there is actually a private members' bill being put forward in the House of Lords, actually, to protect trees, and I think that's being supported by our friends and colleagues at the Woodland Trust. Yeah, did I get that right?
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Mindful of the time, I need to wrap up now, but if you have any more questions, then do please come and grab us later on. I think hopefully you'll have seen clearly there is a massive challenge there. You know, it's like anything else, isn't it? Once you lift the stone and start looking underneath, then you realise the scale of the problem. So initially the reporting goes up, as Mark said, but that's a good thing because then you understand the scale of the problem, find solutions. And I think we've looked at today where those are, which fall broadly under partnership, common standards and approaches, and appropriate use of technology. But I really like Andy's, technology, but the warning, balance that, because human impact is the key bit. Technology can benefit that, but don't go after the technology at the expense of that human intelligence, that human involvement in it, because you can't just rely on the technology. So this is just the starting point. Like I said, look out for the summer edition of the Archaeologist magazine. Do come along and join the group. If you have case studies, we're trying to put together a group of case studies for the webpage so that we can make those available to people. So contact us, talk to us. We'll put together a template with colleagues in CIFA, and we'll be able to start sharing those. And again, you know, make those links with your local police forces. So again, thank you very much to our speakers, both just now and this morning. Thank you to all of you coming, especially our colleagues from the police for joining us today. And, you know, as we go now into lunch, then, you know, do come and talk. But I hope you found it useful, and I hope you don't just walk away now. I hope you do engage with the SIG and work with us going forward. So thank you all very much. And